Mesopotamia. The creators of civilization, welcome to the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia. Long before the pharaohs built pyramids, before Rome rose to power, there was Mesopotamia. This is where writing began. Cities were born, and empires clashed. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why every civilization owes a debt to this land between rivers. Hit that like button, subscribe for more forgotten history. And now, unlike the predictable floods of the Nile, however, the Tigris and Euphrates were temperamental and unpredictable. This unpredictability would profoundly shape Mesopotamian culture, religion, and worldview, creating a civilization that was simultaneously innovative and anxious. This challenging environment fostered innovation and cooperation, as survival depended on sophisticated water management systems that required entire communities to work together. This is the story of Mesopotamia, how it shaped humanity, invented institutions we still use today, and left behind mysteries that continue to intrigue archaeologists and historians alike. This agricultural revolution was one of humanity's most significant developments, allowing people to produce surplus food for the first time. Gradually, permanent settlements emerged, as people realized the advantages of staying in one place to tend crops and store surplus grain. The development of irrigation technology was crucial during this period, requiring unprecedented cooperation to dig canals, build levees, and create storage basins. This cooperation laid the groundwork for complex political and social institutions. This surplus enabled specialization. Some could focus on farming, while others became craftsmen, priests, or administrators. The land between rivers, Mesopotamia, derived from the Greek words mesos meaning between, and patemos meaning river, literally translates to the land between rivers. The ziggurat of Uruk, dedicated to the sky god Anu, was among the first monumental architecture in human history. The city covered over 1,000 acres and was surrounded by massive walls that, according to later epic literature, stretched for over 6 miles. Below them were merchants, craftsmen, and scribes, the educated middle class, who kept the complex economy and administration functioning. At the bottom were farmers and laborers, though even they enjoyed certain legal protections and could sometimes rise in status. These two mighty waterways, the Tigris and Euphrates, carved out a fertile crescent in what is now modern-day Iraq, with portions extending into Syria, Turkey, and Iran. They invented the wheel around 3500 BCE, revolutionizing transportation and pottery making. The Sumerians created the world's first literature, including hymns, prayers, myths. This masterpiece tells the story of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk, and his friendship with the wild man Enki-Namu, ruler of the 3rd dynasty of Ur. Created the earliest known legal code around 2100 BCE. This groundbreaking document established the revolutionary principle that laws should be written down, made public, and applied fairly to all citizens. The code covered everything from property rights to family relationships to criminal punishment. The epic explores themes that remain central to human literature: friendship, mortality, the tension between civilization and nature, and the search for meaning in the face of death. This represented a fundamental shift in political organization, from independent city-states to territorial states controlling multiple cities and ethnic groups, and rose to become cupbearer to the king of Kish before seizing power. Whether or not the legend is true, Sargon clearly possessed exceptional military and political skills. Remarkably, the epic contains the first recorded flood story, predating similar traditions in Hebrew and other cultures by centuries. Managing this vast territory required unprecedented administrative sophistication, a professional imperial bureaucracy, standardized weights and measures, efficient communication systems, professional armies, and even an early postal service. And public justice should be predictable and rational, and legal systems should protect the rights of all citizens, not just the powerful. They created new literary works that blended Sumerian and Semitic traditions, including early versions of the Gilgamesh epic. He established a professional civil service with standardized procedures and possibly created the world's first welfare system, providing support for widows, orphans, and the poor. When invaders breached the system, the entire structure collapsed. Through a combination of military skill, diplomatic cunning, and administrative genius, Hammurabi gradually united most of Mesopotamia under Babylonian rule. His famous law code represented the culmination of 2 millennia of Mesopotamian legal development, establishing principles that would influence legal thinking for thousands of years. Around 2004 BCE, the third dynasty of Ur fell to Elamite invaders and internal rebellions. The government controlled nearly every aspect of economic life, with detailed records showing the state's management of agriculture, manufacturing, and trade, and epitaphes that explored fundamental questions about human existence, divine will, and the meaning of life. The third dynasty of Ur created what may have been the most centralized and bureaucratically sophisticated state the ancient world had yet seen. Ashurbanipal created the world's first organized library at Nippur, containing over 30,000 cuneiform tablets covering every aspect of Mesopotamian knowledge, literature, science, mathematics, medicine, law, and religion. Managing such a vast territory required enormous resources and constant military campaigns. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Babylonians and Medes destroyed Nineveh, ending Assyrian power so completely that the great cities became abandoned ruins. Within a few generations, at its peak, the Assyrian Empire stretched from Iran to Egypt, from Anatolia to the Arabian desert. They were among the first to use iron weapons extensively, giving them a significant advantage over enemies still using bronze. However, Persian rule was relatively benevolent, and Mesopotamian culture continued to flourish under Persian administration. They developed sophisticated siege engines, including battering rams, siege towers, and advanced archery techniques. They made significant advances in algebra and geometry that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance. The Epic of Gilgamesh established literary themes and narrative techniques still influential today. Mesopotamian mathematical systems remain in use worldwide. Every time we read a book, follow a law, or live in a city, we participate in traditions that began over 5,000 years ago in the land between the rivers. Under Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon became one of the wonders of the ancient world, featuring massive walls, the famous Ishtar Gate, decorated with glazed brick reliefs, and possibly the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Every time we read a book, follow a law, or live in a city, we participate in traditions that began over 5,000 years ago in the land between the rivers. Later civilizations throughout history. This remarkable achievement was built on military innovation, administrative efficiency, and systematic use of psychological warfare. Virtually every aspect of modern civilization traces back to Mesopotamian innovations. Cities with complex social organization, written law emphasizing justice and fairness, organized education systems, and fundamental technologies like the wheel, sailboat, and plow, under rulers like Ur-Nammu and Shulgi. This Neo-Sumerian empire controlled most of Mesopotamia through an incredibly detailed administrative system. They developed the sailboat, enabling efficient river and coastal travel. Cities that surrendered were treated relatively well, while those that resisted faced brutal consequences that were widely publicized to discourage future resistance. This comprehensive legal document contained 282 laws covering virtually every aspect of Mesopotamian life. Trade regulations, property rights, family law, criminal justice, and civil disputes, an efficient communication system, including roads and messenger services, allowed rapid communication across vast distances. The Assyrians also developed sophisticated intelligence networks and diplomatic services. The code established the principle of proportional justice, an eye for an eye, while also showing concern for protecting the weak from the powerful. They created a sophisticated mathematical system based on the number 60, which we still use in measuring time and angles. They established the first schools, where young scribes learned the complex art of writing. These communities were already displaying the characteristics that would define Mesopotamian civilization: trade, social complexity, and cooperative organization. The annual flooding of these rivers deposited rich, fertile silt across the plains, creating some of the most productive agricultural land the ancient world had ever seen. Their origins remain one of history's great mysteries there. Language was unlike any other known language, suggesting they either developed in isolation or came from an unknown homeland. This cuneiform system began as simple pictographs pressed into clay tablets, but evolved into a sophisticated writing system capable of recording complex ideas, stories, laws, and administrative records. For the first time in human history, knowledge could be preserved and transmitted across generations with perfect accuracy. They built the world's first true cities, complex urban centers, like Ur, Ur, Lagash, Eridu, and Nippur, with populations in the tens of thousands. These weren't just large villages, but sophisticated urban environments with distinct districts, specialized buildings, and complex social hierarchies. This openness made Mesopotamia a crossroads of cultures, but also perpetually vulnerable to conquest. The scarcity of natural resources beyond limited metal deposits and scarce timber drove Mesopotamians to become master traders, spreading their innovations across the known world while importing materials they needed. The geography was both a blessing and a curse. While the rivers provided water and fertile soil, the region lacked natural barriers like mountains or deserts. The climate was harsh and unpredictable. Temperatures could reach scorching levels in summer, while irregular rainfall made agriculture entirely dependent on river irrigation. The dawn of agriculture and settlement around 10,000 BCE. Hunter-gatherers began settling in fertile Mesopotamia, discovering that wild grasses could be cultivated and improved through selective breeding. The transition wasn't immediate. For thousands of years, people practiced a mixed economy, combining hunting, gathering, and early farming. By 7000 BCE, permanent settlements appeared throughout Mesopotamia. These weren't simple farming villages, but complex communities featuring specialized buildings, organized layouts, and clear evidence of social stratification. Early Mesopotamian settlements, like Jarmo and Tel Soan, show evidence of advanced pottery, sophisticated tools, and long-distance trade networks. The rise of the Sumerians. Around 4500 BCE, the Sumerians established themselves in southern Mesopotamia, particularly in the region known as Sumer. What is certain is that the Sumerians became the architects of human civilization. At each city's heart stood a massive ziggurat, a stepped pyramid structure that served multiple functions: temple to the city's patron deity, storehouse for surplus grain, workshop for craftsmen, an administrative center for the city-state's government. By 3000 BCE, Uruk had reached over 50,000 people, making it likely the world's largest city at the time. Sumerian society was highly stratified and sophisticated. At the top were priests and rulers, who claimed divine authority to govern. The Sumerians were master innovators who fundamentally changed human life. Most importantly, around 3200 BCE, the Sumerians invented writing, the world's first literature and laws. The invention of writing opened entirely new possibilities for human expression and organization. The most famous of these works is the Epic of Gilgamesh, composed around 2100 BCE. The development of writing also enabled the creation of formal legal codes. Even more famous is Hammurabi's Code, created around 1750 BCE by the Babylonian king Hammurabi. These early legal codes established principles that continue to influence legal systems today. Laws should be written. The Akkadian Empire, the world's first multi-ethnic state around 2334 BC, a Semitic leader named Sargon conquered the Sumerian city-states and established the Akkadian Empire, creating the world's first multi-ethnic empire. Sargon's rise was remarkable. According to legend, he was found as a baby floating in a basket on the river, raised by a gardener. At its height, the Akkadian Empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, encompassing most of Mesopotamia and extending into Anatolia and the Levant. The Akkadians were skilled at cultural synthesis. They adopted the superior Sumerian cuneiform writing system for their own Semitic language while preserving Sumerian literature and religious traditions. The empire lasted about 180 years before collapsing around 2154 BCE, probably due to a combination of internal rebellions, invasions by mountain peoples, and a severe drought that archaeological evidence suggests lasted for several decades. The Neo-Sumerian Renaissance and Babylonian rise. After the Akkadian Empire's fall, power returned to Sumerians. Ur-Nammu rebuilt the great ziggurat of Ur, whose ruins still dominate the landscape today. However, this extreme centralization made the state vulnerable to disruption. Into the chaos that followed came Hammurabi of Babylon, the Assyrian war machine. The Assyrians, based in northern Mesopotamia, created the largest empire the ancient world had yet seen. The Assyrians developed the world's first truly professional army, with specialized units for different types of combat: heavy infantry, light infantry, cavalry, chariot forces, and siege specialists. The Assyrian military was also psychologically sophisticated, using terror as a deliberate strategy to discourage resistance. The Assyrian Empire was remarkable for its administrative sophistication. The empire was organized into provinces, each governed by an appointed official responsible to the king. Under Ashur, who conquered Egypt and made the Assyrian Empire the largest the world had ever seen. The empire reached its greatest cultural flowering. However, the empire's very size contributed to its downfall. The Neo-Babylonian Empire and Persian conquest. The Neo-Babylonian Empire represented the final flowering of native Mesopotamian power. This period saw remarkable achievements in astronomy and mathematics. Babylonian astronomers created detailed celestial records, developed methods for predicting eclipses, and created the zodiac system still used today. In 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great of Persia conquered Babylon, ending the last native Mesopotamian empire. Mesopotamian influence on human development cannot be overstated. The invention of writing enabled the accumulation and transmission of knowledge across generations, making possible the development of science, literature, and complex administration. From the first cities to the first empires, from the invention of writing to the codification of law, Mesopotamia truly earned its title as the cradle of civilization. From the first cities to the first empires, from the invention of writing to the codification of law, Mesopotamia truly earned its title as the cradle of civilization. Mesopotamia isn't just a chapter in a textbook. It's the prologue to our story. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient innovation and empire, hit that like button, Subscribe to Owl Tell You What Happened, and share this video with a fellow history nerd. Until next time, keep asking questions, because every civilization leaves clues. An owl tell you what happened.